My name is Steve. Welcome back to my shop. This video is going to be part 2 of my Sanford Model MG surface grinder cleanup and reassembly. I'm going to continue to clean it up, and I'm going to start putting it together. The section that I'm working on right now is what I guess you would consider to be the y-axis. I'm not sure the terminology of the part, but this is the carriage that mounts onto the main base, and I have cleaned up the underside of it, and I'm cleaning out the oil passages, and I'll give you a little bit of a close-up on what that's all about. The first video of this series has been one of my more popular videos. I'm very pleased with that, and I want to thank all of those that left the kind comments. I got a lot of really good response to it. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the new subscribers and my old subscribers that keep coming back for more. So let's get started. Okay, on this carriage there are oil grooves that run pretty much the length of it. I'm cleaning the oil grooves out, and at the end of each oil groove is a hole that crosses over to the other side. Get the old garbage out of there. And in addition to that, there's another hole that goes through to the top of this panel, and that has an oiler on it in the rear on each end. So the oil comes up from this end, and it comes up from the back end, and it goes through this channel. So I'm going to get the underneath of this all cleaned up. Because I've already cleaned out the oil passages, and I'm going to flip it over and make sure that the oil is flowing through like it should. I'll clean up the top, and then we'll put it back on the base. Here, I've got it turned over. This side is pretty dirty. Let me get it all cleaned up. But here are the oilers. There's a ball oiler there, which I've already checked, and that is clear. I squirt oil through from the rear, and you can, if you can see it, there's oil that's come through the top when I cleaned it out. There's an oiler on that side. And there's another one right here in the center. I'm not sure whether you can see that, but that's the one that goes through to the lead screw, to the bearing block. There's a brass block that threads into the Y-axis lead screw. And that one is clear also. And then there are two holes back here that go through covers that I've taken off. There's covers that go over the top, and then there's oilers in the top of the covers, and they go through to the back of those. So now I'm going to start to clean up this side, and it's pretty dirty. There's a lot of chips and so on. Apparently this was stored, kept in an area where there was a lot of machining done. Must have been by milling machine or something. Just quick bit of chips on it. Initially, what I'm using for a cleaner on this, is as good as anything, is just some WD-40. And then after I get the majority of the oil and the grease and so on cleaned up, then I go over it and clean up the paint with acetone. As of right now, I'm not planning on repainting this. The paint's in pretty good shape. I may change my mind, but as of right now, I just plan on getting it back together, getting it back into operation. I'm sure you can see or not that these waves have not been hand scraped as such. However, they have been flaked. You can see the pattern of the flaking on it. And the purpose of that is that it holds the oil. I'm going over the these machine surfaces with a stone, just to knock down any of the raised areas, not actually taking any material off, keeping it nice and flat. It's a very fine stone, but I am noticing along the edges that the edges are raised up and there are a few nicks and so on. So I'm running the stone along them to get them nice and flat. I'm going to finish cleaning this up, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to set it on the base. I've got the base pretty well cleaned up. The ways, the V-ways on this, I don't know if you can see it or not, but they have that same flaking on them to hold the oil. I've got the lead screw in and oiled up. I'm going to add a little bit of whey oil. There's an oiler right in the middle, and that goes through into the carriage that I'm installing. And there it goes, the oil. As I run this in and out, the oil goes down to the screw. And I'm going to oil up the ways. I purchased a gallon of whey oil from McMaster Car and put it in this oiler. I used my my fine stone, and I stoned off these ways to remove any of the high spots. And now I'm going to set the carriage on. Oil down through oil holes, make sure I oil down the ways. Good, stand up to the side. Very good. Great. That fits nice and smooth. Now I just have to line up the bearing block. Okay, now I'm going to get a drift punch and run it through the hole to line up the bearing block. Oops. Okay, it looks like I've got it lined up. And this is the oiler for the bearing. Put a little extra oil in there. Nice and smooth. I've got the whey covers cleaned up and ready to put back on. They fit on here, and there's the oiler that lines up with the hole in the base. So get them screwed back on. And now we'll start working on the X-axis table. And now it's time to clean up the X-axis table. Little nicks on the ends here. Other than that, they're pretty good. And there's virtually little to no wear. Normally you would find a lip. I can see it when I stone it off here. I can see that there's a little bit of a lip there, but it's even all the way across. But virtually cannot feel it, but it is raised just a tiny bit. And so far, that's the only wear that I have seen on any of the ways. There's a manifold on the front that's got an oiler on it, and I've cleaned that out. I took it off and cleaned it out, and I just cleared the oil passage. And then there's a second hole that comes up to the rear to this V-way, and that one's clear also. I'm just cleaning out this slot gets a rack. There's a pinion gear on the carriage, and that gives me my X-axis travel. And I took that out of here. The original vise that was on this machine, or the vise that was on it when I got it, was 18-inch. It's only a 12-inch travel grinder. It had an 18-inch mag chuck on it. So I have replaced that, which I explained in the first part of this video. But that was held on by two socket head cap screws that were actually drilled in from the bottom, and one of them was underneath of that rack gear, so I had to take it off to get the mag chuck off. So I'm going to turn this over now and start working on the other side. Now I'm to my first dilemma, if you will. The mag chuck fits on this flat pad here, and most of these grinders have got T-slots cut in these tabs for the hold downs, and there are no T-slots and the holes that are here are too far out. So I have a decision to make. Do I cut T-slots in here, or do I just drill it for the hold down brackets? And I think at this point I'm going to drill it and tap it for those hold downs rather than cut the T-slots. I don't expect to use this without the magnet chuck on it. So once that's on there, I think it's on there for good. So I think that cutting the T-slots would be just extra work at this point. So let me get it cleaned up, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to start drilling. Now, I've made my final decision. These are the clamps that will hold it down, and they go through into this pad. So I'm going to, that's the position of the chuck, approximately. Of course I'll dial it in, but it only has to be within 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch for what I'm doing right now. So I'll set that in place and use my transfer punch and center punch this pad. Okay, and I'll do the other end the same way. Just double checking to see if I've got it centered on the pad, and it looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to drill and tap this pad and get a couple of studs. I'm going to have to put a little shim under there, either that or I'm probably going to mill this down a little bit so that it sits flush or sits level. This pad is a little bit below the surface that the chuck is mounted on. So I think there's enough meat there. I'm going to mill that off so that it sits flat. I milled about 1/8 of an inch off of the pad on each end, and now it sits level. I'm going to tap these holes to 7/16 14, which is a letter U drill. That's better. That one's sharp. The other one was getting pretty dull. And was binding up a little bit. That one went right in, no problem. Great. I think I'm going to get a couple of studs for this, but right now I've got these short 7/16 bolts and they do just fine. That's not going anywhere. Okay, that's going to wrap up this video. I'm going to I've decided to paint this piece. Since I'm going to be using coolant with it, I'm going to paint it with the Rust-Oleum. And so in the next video I will complete this section, this piece. I'm going to be painting it. I'm going to make some guard for the end, a splash guard or for this end, and get it ready to put back on the base. See you in the next video.